Hello and welcome to Hyper Live. Today we have our special guest Andrea Magnorsky. Welcome, and as usual, co-host Daniel Walters.
G'day,
Our
everyone.
topic today is we're talking DDD and systems thinking, and then make some connections to AI and how that may be influencing or changing some of our thinking around those concepts. And I'll pass over to you, Daniel, if you want to maybe make some intros, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, cool. So, hi everyone. I'm Daniel Walters, founder of Great CTO, which focuses on coaching and consulting and content and other things. Yeah, with all that, welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you, Garrett, also for having me here. I guess my headline title would be something like I'm the principal consultant for ModelBridge Software and Systems, which is a consultancy that kind of specializes on architecture modernization by kind of domain-driven design, system thinking, and kind of training. That being like, people might not know these practices. So some of that background, like some of that happened because many years ago, I created bite-sized architecture sessions. But many, many more years before that, I kind of did my first DDD implementation in and around probably 2010. And some of that happened in Ireland. And it was it all started with where I was working at the time. We also tried to do a book club, reading the Blue Book, which was very long. It was one of the longest book clubs I've ever been part of, but it was a really good way to learn together with other people.
I'm curious
what
book. Yeah. I'm curious, what did the book club take out of it? What were the ideas that resonated? Because I think I've always found people have different bits that they pick out as the kind of aha moments.
Yeah, well, so what we did, we went chapter by chapter. So I can't tell you what we took out because we dissected the book. The first few chapters were like, yeah, this is great. Oh my gosh, we're learning so much. And then as the book kept going, and we were like, oh my God, we will never finish this book. There was some chapters about where all of us had slightly different experiences, and we were trying to imagine what would happen if we were to implement those. And we had many, like, this is Ireland, right? So a lot of our social lives there revolve around the pub. So obviously the book club was in a pub. And so by the confluence of the two things meant very long into the night discussions about how you do that and how, maybe your idea was better than someone else's, especially by some point where you were kind of making not all that much sense. But we try to keep it. I think. I mean, obviously, I'm joking. But there was a lot of learning by trying to make it work and trying to make sense of our systems and how we thought about them at the time versus what we could try to implement. So that was the beginning. I then moved on to a couple of years later to another organization where they were using DDD. They were using event sourcing as a way to store things. And by that time, I had kind of that place where I was working where we did DDD first time. We kind of rewrote that system a few times before it got into some sort of more completion state, let's say. But one thing that I learned is that you can overcomplicate the system quite a bit. And you start learning the patterns of things that work and things that maybe are not suitable for the problem. So the second time that I was doing this, it felt very strange to be doing an event sourcing solution for a system that didn't have a high write demands. And so you start kind of querying this, and it's like, well, this decision was taken already. And that's where, like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I need to learn more. And so you iterate through this. And later on in life, I became a contractor and later on a consultant. And this is where it's really nice to be able to bring all of these experiences with you when you're making decisions. The fact, some of these decisions were, let's call it, right. and some of them were not so right because they were maybe more time consuming to implement, harder to support. Could we have done something better? And the reality is that people make decisions at the time and they seem right. This is also what kind of got me interested in architecture. It's like, well, are there better ways to make decisions? Because at the end of the day, architecture is all about these decisions that are like all stacked one on top of the other, and you can only take a decision that makes sense with the next lab. You can't put a decision here because it just falls, right?
Yeah.
So I think that may be some sort of intro.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. And yeah, I think DED it's still very alive and active, isn't it? And I think probably because the the initial kind of version of it was very kind of code centric in terms of object oriented, essentially. But then with the advent of microservices, we found that a whole bunch of those ideas, they're kind of sort of fractal, I guess, in a way. They sort of, they're aspects of code as just as they are aspects of architecture. And I think
and
it's
then
helped a lot.
up to people as well, right? So
That's right. Yeah, the ubiquitous language and those kind of concepts, I think, were quite revelatory at the time, and they're still incredibly useful, right?
Absolutely, and I think that you're talking about the context. I think it's funny, even when talking about DDD, there is some camps that think there is like a holy grail of how you would do anything, and I think it can be quite difficult to fit that ideal to your problem. So isn't it better to try to see where you are and try to see what can you get out of some ideas, and slowly bring the useful bits of those ideas into what you're doing, so that in a little bit of a more iterative approach. There are some areas of a system that will lend themselves to a more kind of big bang, let's just do this particular way, but generally they are more risky, and so that risk needs to be balanced by either very good reward or an extremely good reason. So, like with DDD is like one of the tools to do things. If it helps you think about how to find your solution, awesome. If it constrains you, then why is that? Like the nuances where it becomes more valuable, I think. All of these ideas.
You mentioned, some of the decisions may be more correct than others, and I'd extend that and say that at a point in time as well. So you can have decisions that were right based on the context and the information at the time, but then things change. I mean, we're in a particular inflection point in time where things are changing. Not that they ever stop.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think I'm more and more into these days recording our decisions. I think the act of recording decisions is such a radical thing to when you do it with support, right? As in, you decide to start using decision records, and it can massively change how your organization works. And I think it's like such a simple little thing that you can do, but you need to support the practice, right? You need to, like, writing good decision records is hard, and probably you need some sort of way to review those decision records. And when you review those decision records, everyone could turn up there and listen. Some people would be actively involved and interested into what is the decision of Mongo or SQL or whatever, and people that are maybe not directly affected can learn a lot by just even listening to the discussion. And imagine if we incorporate those into the decision records, and then we can search this. The more I do this practice, the more I think that it's like the secret. I feel like that's a secret superpower when orgs that are deliberate about the practice of recording their decisions.
Yeah, and I agree. I've had a lot of success with that as well, and I think a lot of the time it sort of it makes it very visible, the balance of intentional architecture and emergent design, or centralized versus decentralized decision making. And that can be one of the things that really, it can either empower teams or it can really, really slow them down. And a lot of organizations are just not aware of the consequences or even the balance that they have. And so making that visible, I think, is really valuable.
I would argue that even if the organization is centralized, like it's more on the, let's say there is like a spectrum, this is very decentralized and this is very centralized. Even if you're more towards the centralized hierarchical ones, you still get a lot of bang for your buck by recording these decisions from a transparency point of view, and even this idea of understanding why did we do that.
Yeah, the
And because
archaeology.
it captures a lot of the time of like in the context. The things like they're hard to write and they're like quite a bit of work. And this is where some I think a great way for decision records to fail is when you mandate them. You mandate them, that's it. You just kind of go like, boop, this is the nail of the coffin, boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
It's very hard. But if you kind of supporting them, like, what if we start recording things? It's funny. It's like adoption goes a lot higher, and people start saying, actually, that was really useful for me because now I can, find the stuff that I worked on 3 months ago, and actually I know what I did and why. Dun, 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 dun.
I feel like
right.
alternatives to mandates has been a bit of a theme of this show.
Yes.
We were talking with Bianca Grizzar about some of the AI mandates and things like that. So there are better ways, and when you consider how it's people's behaviour that is needed to make this work. Then that's the thing that mandates can sort of work against. Yeah.
Got a question here actually from Luke. Art or science? Is architecture art or science, or a mixture?
Well, I guess I would further what is art and what is science,
It
because
depends.
then
It depends.
and I'm not trying to be difficult, but like art can be like a radical kind of presentation and kind of speaking about what's happening today in society. Science could be the same if you read about it the same way. So is art science? I'm just that bit I'm missing with, but
It's like time space, right? It's a continuum. It's the art science continuum.
yeah, I think I mean trying to actually answer the question in a non-facetious way or a slightly not so fun way. I think that when you're asking is this art is kind of coming back to that thing about having a lot of design of systems leans somewhat in experienced people, and that means their own heuristics for making decisions. So that's where it could feel more craft art side of things. And if we have better ways to make decisions, you could lean on the more sciencey thing. But again, just trying to actually answer the question. But it depends. That would be my hot take. What about you, Darren?
When I think about craftsmanship, think of someone like creating like a fine chair, but then we can sit on it and it might not hold our weight. In which case we're like immediately experiencing empiricism. So, I feel these things are strongly related and hard to disentangle.
Sorry, I thought you were going to make a joke about going on a diet or something like that.
Well, it was there for anyone who wanted to jump in.
Well, it's always a fascinating one, isn't it? I think there's you need the theoretical side is really helpful because I think the theories change over time, and that helps us to understand why we're approaching things or how we're thinking about things. But then there's also the experiential side, and I guess the art side for me is more about, do you enjoy playing with these constructs and moving them around, and that feels more like art. But you kind of need the theory to go, well, I know the consequences of moving things around, so I've got some constraints or some areas to move things around in. But I feel like you need a mixture of both.
Yeah,
I mean,
experimentation is so important when dealing with systems.
And you're striving for like common understanding and some sense that you're actually aligning, like, you know, that the same thing that's in your head is in other people's head, you know, which is why we reach for a lot of these tools. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about, I know you're also very passionate about systems thinking, which I think it's a funny one, isn't it? It's been around for a very long time, the constructs of it. In fact, I think it was Jerry Weinberg who wrote the first systems thinking book, which is a long time ago. But it's still really kind of relevant, and I think it's still it's part of the kind of conversation still. But yeah, tell us about your experience and why you find it's powerful.
For sure. So what I found interesting is that, and in a way, I kind of sometimes try to not say systems thinking, but it's something we all kind of. I was like, oh, this kind of stuff. Also, we do systems. Like literally, when people's like, oh, well, we do systems, and then we kind of forgot about what a system means. Um, so thank you, Luke, for all the great answers. So I created bite-sized architecture sessions because as a practice, right? It's like I actually created the practice and I got tired of telling the practice in a long-winded way, so I wrote a blog post and I thought I should give this a name, and it needs to be a name that when the acronyms is not like an insult. And I was like, I wanted the name to tell you kind of what it is, because it seems useful. I put it in my blog post and then people would forget about it in 5 minutes. That did not happen, which is quite nice actually. When I started seeing the impact of that by people like literally randomly on the internet reaching out and going like, I tried that and it was really useful, and I got more and more of those, I kind of thought, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to do some talks about this, I guess. So I started doing some talks, and then Kenny from VDDD, from Virtual DDD, reached out and said, do you want to come over? And then I did DDD like a long time ago, but I wasn't very engaged with the community side of things, mostly because I didn't really, I don't know, those kind of things that you just, I had maybe it was the book club. We did the book club, and after that I was like, let's talk about something else. But for a while, I kind of didn't really engage too much with the community. But when that happened, I was like, oh, this is an amazing community where I can learn so much practice, so many books. In the middle of all the learning, I meet Diana Montaleon. She likes it when I pronounce it this way, so I'm keeping it because I feel like I'm in some sort of film. You know, it's like you're in like El Zorro or something like that. Anyway, I met her, and it's like, well, you're basically created something that's like a tool for systems thinking. I was like, I did what? And obviously, then I started kind of reading the whole Donella Meadows and her book, and I started learning more and more. And I was like, oh, this is how I've been thinking all along. My madness has a name, and it's not just you're mad. It's actually this way of kind of trying to see the whole and understand the whole, and that it makes sense how things work together with a goal. This is like literally how you think in terms of systems, which is in a way it felt like coming home, and at the same time it's like, oh my god, there is all these extra things that I could leverage. So that's where I came into it, and I find it a very useful way to describe people to people what's happening when things don't make sense when you think sequentially, because it's that thing of seeing all of the things working at once, and you can't see it. You can't see it. Like I can't tell you a story about it, right? I can tell you some story that will drive you through some sort of path. But in reality, you need to build a model of your system by looking possibly at multiple pictures, reasoning about it, and maybe you will have some sort of idea of what your system actually does. But it's the bigger the system, the harder it is to have a more complete picture.
Yeah, that's right. I like the term socio-technical systems now as well, because I think you can't separate the human side from the from the technology side. And in fact, a lot of the challenges of building good architectures is in fact not the technology so much, because it is deterministic in a certain sense, but it's all of the interactions with it and how you get value out of it. And when you add the humans in the mix, essentially, then everything becomes very different, right? And that's kind of, that the emergent properties that you're sort of hinting at there, Andrea, as well.
Yeah, just to dig into some specifics of that with the bite-size architecture sessions. So one of the steps is you call it alone together alone?
Alone together.
Yeah. And so I had some experience when I was working in Malaysia, and particularly when we used to go to our China office, of, so English was the second language for a lot of the team, or even just they had no English, so we had to find ways to communicate together. And so we weren't. Yeah, well, it was a lot of fun. But we also had a mix of extroverts, omniverts, introverts in the team. And so what I recognized in this step was something which we had found was really accessible for different personality types, different levels of communication and things like that. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Was that part of the motivation? It's sort of like
100%. So I came to this because initially, this is like, I don't know, let's say this is 2018, 2019, where I started doing this. It's like very complicated or complex. It's probably complex domain, really. Very many moving parts, a team handling 30, maybe it was 20 microservices, and trying to orchestrate, like understanding the orchestration of these systems that really kind of grew somewhat organically, and trying to see how we can understand that and see if we can do something about it. But first we needed to know how does it work, because we need to add stuff to it. And we did this, that there was the normal thing of some guy that's been there for a while can tell you, oh, when you do this 13 really, strange steps, these 3 even stranger things will happen. And, this person will have all this knowledge in their heads. And then it will be some other bits someone else knew. And I was like, surely we can do better than that. We have so many paths that are actually our bread and butter. How about we just go and deliberately try to learn those, so that we already know, and then we all know, and we don't depend on this poor person. It's fun to be the person that people ask you questions about, but I'm sure it gets kind of tiring after a while. But also, I kind of wanted to have that in my head, that model. I wanted that mental model. And at the time, I didn't realize that how important the synchronizing the mental models were. So what I was trying to do is that we all sync. Can we synchronize our mental models? And so we started, and we were like, listen, let's try. It's an hour. We'll buy some brownies and sit down, write this down. Hopefully, I'm not going to die of diabetes, but the brownies were really good. So, but anyway, we did this first thing, and we were like, oh, that was really good, but we didn't have the alone together. And the thing is that there was exactly what you said, Dan. Some people more outgoing, can talk on the spot, no problem. Other people more quiet. And I thought, wouldn't it be better if we all get a chance to actually think about it? What I wanted is not just introvert, extrovert, but what I wanted is I want to think about it while I'm there. I don't want homework, because nobody will. Mm-hmm. I don't like homework. Other people just won't do it. Then 2 people will do it, probably the guy that knows everything. And that means that we'll just deflect to that, rather than trying to get our stuff that we know and then show it and talk about it. I think I know this, I'm not sure about that. And then you kind of build something together. And so this iterated, we got there, and I was like, oh, this is actually super useful. So we did a few more times. And then I went somewhere else shortly after, and we tried it there. Literally, I arrived into the new gig, also a complex domain, and I was like, right, let's do this. And people were like, okay. Again, hopefully the office was closed, so there was also good pastries to be had. London is pretty good for that, actually. So yeah, that was the genesis. So we did it a few times, and then it was blog post.
So
Yeah.
you
It's
highlighted, yeah, you highlighted the importance of the synchronization, which I think it's another systems aspect, right? That for people to have there's a timing issue. They've got to be present and available and ready at the same time.
this is
So,
why it was so important to keep these things short.
mm-hmm,
Attention spans and the reality that we had to get some stuff done. So if you have I thought an hour was the upper bound. I think if you're in person, you can stretch it out a little bit, like a cheeky extra half an hour, 15 minutes. It can be,
mm-hmm,
especially if you're in the middle of something, it can be very effective. But I thought little and often, like basically turn it into a practice of learning about your systems.
mm-hmm,
And also, like, we were talking about this when we started actually doing this practice. Like, how can it be that we're building this and yet we spend zero time learning about what is it that we're doing together?
mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. It's like, if this is our bread and butter, why don't we have a time where we learn about this? And obviously, and this is a cross-functional team, right? So product person was there, tester. We didn't have a tester there actually, but there was some other role there. I can't remember now what, but we had some other role. So there was like a lot of engineers, product engineering manager that was also like, and they were like, of course, this makes sense. Let's do it. So, and that also meant the product person had a lot better, so much better context to make decisions. The
Mm.
engineering manager also could lead with a lot without having to go like, hi, person that knows more, can you say? Or hi, people, how does this complicated path works? Because
It's
they
it's
Yeah.
already knew.
it's got me thinking in this sort of AI assisted software development era that we're in. I mean, we're experiencing it ourselves. With the team working at HYPR, everyone's learning different tools, different models, and we're needing to sync and compare notes. And one of the things that we learn in there is also, if you don't think about architecture when you're working with these tools, then you will get just whatever the most common thing the tools have seen.
Ball of months. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
if the no architecture, basically, if you don't design something,
Mm-hmm.
like it's not that you skipped this important step, it's that you don't have a design. So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to pay the price of not spending time of that. It's like, it's an obvious, when you start thinking about it, it's like that's the risk. If you don't consider the decision, then the decision would be a default.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of really important sort of connections there for me. I think I've certainly observed how facilitation or the practices that you use within an organization can actually fundamentally or powerfully affect the culture and the way people interact together. And so that's and the bite-sized architecture is a great example of that, right? So then what are those practices that help humans still maintain communication and collaboration whilst using AI? And then I think the other really important point that you just made is design doesn't go away, right? Architecture doesn't go away. And I think probably the easiest step, and what we're certainly doing, I think a lot of other people are doing, is just accelerate the good ways of working as the very first step, right? That's the easiest thing to do. Like, for example, I might go into a client, have a conversation about their systems and architecture, transcribe that, and turn that, using AI tools into some visualizations or some diagrams, and then that helps everybody else to understand the same kind of view of the system, and then you can evolve it together. So I think there's some
Yeah.
easy steps.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really learned through doing bite size in many different teams is that people, like, I think once I say it, you will kind of go like, oh, of course I do that too. I think it's easier for people to learn something when they were part of creating that something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, for example, you could, instead of doing the transcription thing, you could build the thing together while you're there. There's It could be that initially it might be like a little bit friction, but practices like bite size are all about trying to do that, because the product of something like bite size is not a diagram. The product is understanding. That's the main thing. The diagram is a byproduct. It's like, it's a nice to have. You don't go to the holidays to bring back a picture unless you're a photographer, right?
Yeah,
You go to the holiday because you want to be and have a holiday. And take a picture, and you then can be like, oh, look at this, I had a nice burger while I was in this place, or whatever you took a picture of. Obviously I'm hungry, I guess, with all the
I think sometimes you need to make a little bit of sense across a very broad group of people before you can kind of pull them into the room, and then you've got a starting point, right?
Yeah, and also like workshopping, going like, hey, look at this picture, it's wrong. Let's get it to be, or like you're like, listen, as a consultant, I think this happens a lot, and it's very easy to do, right? You kind of say, right, this is a picture I drew based on 10 minutes I spent learning about your system, so it's going to be completely wrong. Let's make it better together. And suddenly like, oh yeah, you got this bit right, but actually, sorry, Dan, but actually, there will be all these different things that you just didn't include at all, and then you workshop it together. I find that extremely powerful.
I was just going to make the comment that you can take these images that you're creating together and you can actually pass them to your AI assisted software development tools. So, and then the other thing I was just going to call out, thank you, Vani, for her contribution. She said, learn together, no homework, present, available, and ready. I love that.
Yeah, that's a really nice, that could be we were looking for what is the thing that kind of brings it all together. And I think that's a really good synthesis.
That could be our tagline.
Yeah, another nice one from Beth. Yeah, you don't go on holiday to bring back a picture. Yep. It's all about the experience, isn't it? Yeah.
Some people do, I think. Some people do.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the photographers. I mean, fair enough. I mean, that's your experience. But I mean, I take a picture with one of these, right? So, and I'm like, boop, okay, another picture of the sea or whatever.
All right. Well, I've got an interesting one for you. So we've mentioned, this AI, this generative AI era that we're in. And so, what does it really mean to build for humans first, and how does that reframe some of our practices? What changes? What stays the same?
I think I tend to lean on, at the end of the day, however we're building systems, it's all about understanding where we're going. If you think about architecture in general, it's about trying to bring and make sense of things. Like you're a sense maker in another way, and you're trying to bring that sense making thing together and pushing it through to where are we and where are we going. Right, so things make sense, like, okay, we're in a ball of mud, cool. We understood that that's where we are. And then we understand that actually we need to be slightly less ball of muddy, at least in these 2 or 3 parts. And let's try to clean them up and move them forward. And so I think when it comes to AI, the good old experiment, evaluate, and adapt, basically try something. Is it working for you in your very specific context? Awesome. If it is, adopt it, measure it, and if it's really working like you thought it did in the experiment, in like a more real thing, then you can go like, right, we're going to keep this practice and remove the other things. As long as you're doing that feedback loop. So we're coming to systems thinking on trying to experiment, have feedback loops that you really validate, not just vanity observability, but actual, do you have a higher instance? Do you have higher bug counts? What happens when things go wrong? Do people understand what they're working on? Actually, I would look into those type of metrics, and basically you have a unique context most of the times. So do what it's right. But I think one of the key things, one of the really most important things is like, you should be trying stuff. So no risk, no rewards. And given the rate of change that we're seeing, probably at least trying it and see what works for you seems like a good idea.
Yeah, that's right. I always love the phrase, there's more information in failure than there is in success, right? So you've got to be, the feedback loops, and like you say, you've got to have that culture where you can try things.
I think I love that thing. We had Joaquim as a host in virtual DDD recently, and he talked about the culture of celebrating failure, and I think we should make. I hope that becomes more popular, because you learn a lot more from failure than from if everything goes good. You're like, I need to change nothing. Let's go. Poop, 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 poop. But if you're celebrating failure, you're saying, okay, how did we fail? What went wrong? As long as you're not going like, and I just built a house and burned it down. Probably not good. But slightly smaller failures and kind of contain them. Go like, oh, I burned this piece of paper in a little bit of a container. Much better. Learn, maybe don't put your hand on it, etc. Same thing.
So I've learned that lesson about context as a leader. It's one where you learn it at different levels. You know what I mean? Like I learned it at sort of a team level and then a multi-team level, and then I changed companies and then made the same mistake again. So went from an organization where I'd built up the team, switched to a new company. The culture was, two companies merged together, quite different. And I thought, I've got my playbook of all the things that worked. And I was like, okay, let's just run the playbook again. And I had a really tough 6 months when, more went wrong than right. And so I had a lot of tough lessons. So, that point you made just really, really resonates with me.
I think I think DDD as a practice, as a whole kind of quite holistic practice, it is very useful to think in terms of context, because it tries to basically try to train you into like there is a language attached to some context. There are boundaries in a system, and you start trying to always maybe, is this a unit? Is this a domain or something? What is it? How do you find those boundaries? And generally with difficulty. But I think it's a really good exercise or kind of mental, kind of like a way to think on finding those contexts. And actually we were talking just before this with Gareth about what I think is a really good training for understanding when you should use like different tools. And it's like, well, what is it giving you? How can you find and understand your context? I did wonder, how is it for executives these days? How do they manage to learn to contextualize? Do you have any insights?
It's a good question. I mean, I see a lot of executives that struggle with this because there's a lot of outsourcing or importing ideas. Like, see a success over there, I want to import it and have the same success here. And so there is a lot of ignoring of context differences and things like that. I think there are some consultancies that ignore that, and there are some that really pay attention to it. So that can be a different differentiator for consultancies as well. What do you think, Gareth?
Yeah, look, I think context is it's hugely important, isn't it? And I think, you have a kind of, I guess, a set of tools or approaches, or heuristics that you carry around with you. But I certainly need to continue to remind myself not to fall into your own biases. I remember when I first learnt Kanban, this is many years ago, then you'd look at systems and everything was broken because they didn't fit into the mental model that you had. And so you're trying to change them to be in that mental model. And then after a while, you realize that, there are certain bits of context which are really, really important. And those are the things you need to pay attention to. Of course, it doesn't change the theory of flow and all those great ideas that we still love and use, but it definitely changes the way you apply them and the speed at which you apply them and where you choose not to apply them.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
also kind of wondered about how to try to get some sort of signals for, oh, you're not paying attention to the context. And in there, when I'm thinking about this, and I kind of want to throw back this at you again, which is like, I was thinking the main ways I tend to get signals is try to find something that will give me a feedback loop as soon as possible, and also relying on communities, like who are your peers, and they can, people that you trust that will tell you that what are you doing.
mm,
Because I think at the end of the day, it's easier for people outside of your system to see your system than for you to see the system you're part of, isn't it?
mhm,
Yeah, that's right. That's the counterbalance, right? So, how many times you'll talk to people that have been in an organization for a while, and it's almost like people just become they can no longer see things because they have got workarounds, and it's just become tacit knowledge to them, and they're not even conscious sometimes of the things that they're doing. Which on the first couple of days they were there, they were they would be a shock to them, right? But now you learn how to fit in and work around things to make things happen, and then you just forget them. So I think that the fresh perspective is the counterbalance to
mm.
context as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I first came across these ideas with Cynefin. It was in some leadership training I did when I was working at Experian, but it was all very theoretical to me at that point. So I still made the mistake that I gave, the example that I gave earlier. But what really brought it to life was reading the Simon Wardley's Wardley Maps book.
Mm.
So. Because at that point I was a leader who was, succeeding in a small way and failing in a big way. And, I think his first chapter is something like on being lost. And I was like, yeah, I can identify with that. So I've really found the Wardley tools, his maps and doctrine, and some of the other tables really, really helpful for navigating that and for getting a perspective. And those tools are great for collaborating. So those could be tools that you could use in a bite-sized architecture session type format. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, when I teach PyTest, generally I start with C4, mostly because it's very friendly to people that have never modeled before. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a modeling agnostic tool, and I have used it with Wardley and other. You can even, you have a question and you want to really ponder on it, you can use it for that. So it's as lightweight as that. So yeah, I'm really keen to hear a bit more about your experience with Wordly, because I think I've heard a lot about using it in a kind of architecture context, as in how do these components through time, or what about should we? I mean, there's the buy or build type questions, but it would be great to hear a bit more from your
Yeah,
usage.
I was going to say I love the perspective of both. You've got the commercial product side and the technical architectural side on one map. So it's like you can just quickly look at a Wardley map and go, why are we doing this thing, right? If you can't see that there's some genesis, there's something new, there's something innovative, and it's a new product, and then it makes you question that. But then you also see the complexity of the systems. And the other thing I love is you can also draw lines around what's new and what are we introducing into an organization, what already exists. And you can see the different speeds, if you like, or the different ways of working. And you can start to identify where the sources of friction are between the new that you're bringing in and the existing legacy or heritage capabilities that you need to interact with. There's just so many. I think you generate a lot of insights depending on the type of work you're doing, but the map seems quite universal. Sorry, Daniel, over to you.
Well, we are out of time, so that will need to be another episode, Gareth. But maybe we can get a guest. I've found a lot of value in them, but I'm not an expert, so we could get maybe Ben Mosier or Simon or someone else
I
on
think
to
I
chat
think
about that.
Simon would is someone we can ping for, and
Mm.
he can say no. I mean, obviously he's a grown person, but why not? And Ben Moiser as well. They are both quite active online, so it would be great to hear their insights on this.
That'd be fantastic. Right. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Andrea. Pleasure as always, and thank you for sharing your insights and some, hopefully interesting. People found that interesting from the comments. There were some great comments, so thank you for those people that contributed as well.
So we can find Andrea at modelbridgesoftware.com or on your LinkedIn.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think this was very interesting. I love this chat. And thank you everyone for attending and participating and asking questions and making comments. That was very, very nice.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. And if you're interested in these topics and want to have a chat, reach out to Andrea or Gareth and I over at HYPR. We'd love to talk with you.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers.